Welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco, your personal financial quarterback. Whether you've had years of success in your business or are just starting out, DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office can help you create a vision for your business, life, and family and guide you toward the fulfillment of that goal. As they say, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your virtual family office. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. Matt, good morning. How are you, man?
I'm just fantastic, Eric. How about yourself?
Well, I'm excited. I'm really excited because, I know, right? You told me a couple weeks ago that you you told me probably about a month and a half ago about this guest specifically that you brought on the show today, and that is Amy Bradley, who is the president and CEO of Cambria Regional Chamber. Good morning, Amy. How are you?
Good morning, Eric. Doing well. Thanks.
I'm so excited. He's been talking you up, I'll be honest.
Uh-oh. Pressure's on.
Your pressure's on. That's right. This is definitely going to be a fun podcast. I'm interested to learn what you do and how you do it. Matt's given me a little bit of background, but of course the audience hasn't heard that yet. So Matt, I'm going to let you just take over and let's just do this.
Let's do it.
All right.
So we've been doing a number of podcasts on some success stories, especially through COVID, and how businesses have been able to adapt. And the feedback that I'm getting is that people are really finding hope in those stories. So Amy is the president and CEO of the Cambria Regional Chamber of Commerce here in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And they support, educate, advocate, and partner with businesses in our area. And I've known Amy and her husband, John, for a long time. Our kids went to school together. And since her work with the Chamber involves actively working with businesses in our county, I brought her onto the show to talk about some of the success stories that she's experienced during this whole COVID-19 pandemic. And hopefully she'll be able to give you some ideas of how to adapt your family business to this new normal. So, Amy, I want to thank you for coming on the show today.
It's my pleasure, and I'm super excited to talk about this because I am really impressed with the businesses in our region and how some of them have really pivoted to get through these trying times. So I think there are a lot of great examples out there.
That's great. So just to start, Amy, why don't you give the audience just some background on how you ended up coming to the Chamber?
Yeah, it's an interesting path I've taken. So the real short version, I spent 10 years as a news anchor and reporter, so really honed communication skills and writing skills, kind of parlayed that into an 18-year career as head of communications and marketing for the Conemaugh Health System. So in that role, I spoke on behalf of about 5,000 employees and 350 physicians. Again, spent a lot of time in really brand building and how to get the best message out there, build a lot of positivity around the health system. And after about 18 years at that, I saw that this Chamber of Commerce CEO position opened up. And I thought, wow, I'm crazy about this area. I've lived here for probably 25 years now. And couldn't I take my communications, my positivity, my storytelling, and make that's something positive for the Cambria County region? And so that's what I did. I've jumped in about 2 years ago to this role, still learning a lot, but we've had great success. We had our busiest year ever for new members last year, and we were doing really well in 2020, and then COVID hit. But we're starting, I'm happy to say we've had 5 or 6 new members in the past week. So I feel like things are opening back up, and we're going to get that momentum building again.
Yeah, I've seen the new members coming through, and I do have to say, having been a business owner in this area for a number of years, for a long time, the Chamber really didn't do a whole lot. And when you came on board, I've really seen just an uptick in the Chamber's involvement in the business community, in the support that it's been able to give. So I have to give you kudos for the work that you've been doing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And I just think times are different too. I think with social media and the use of video and storytelling, I think chambers, not just ours, but chambers across the country are finding new tools and new ways to support their business community. So I think it's twofold, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. So tell us a little bit about what the Chamber does for business owners in our community.
When I first took over the chamber, I wasn't quite sure everything that the chamber did. And honestly, it was a little hard to go out and seek new members at first because I'm like, well, we support the business community. But then now that I've been in it 2 years, like I can't stop talking about all of the different things. So there's a lot of broad buckets, but I think it boils down to two areas. One, we support the business community. What do businesses need to succeed in our region? So for some, that's developing a relationship and a communication with our elected officials. For others, it's, marketing and getting their information out there. For many, it's that networking, building a network of people that they get to meet and get to become friends with and get to do work with. There's a lot of events that we do for our region. The other big bucket and a place where I feel, is really in my comfort zone is just kind of being the cheerleader for this region, getting the word out about why Cambria County is great, why our businesses are great, trying to get people to consider living, working, and playing in Cambria County. What's great about our region, what differentiates it from other places, and why should somebody consider building their business here. So those are kind of the two big buckets, supporting our businesses and then promoting the heck out of our area because there's so many good things going on. And we want to make sure, there's always a vocal minority who aren't happy about much. And we just want to drown them out with really the good news that's happening in our region.
Yes. I think we give ourselves a bad rap too many times. And there is a lot that this area offers. I mean, you look at, if you like outdoors, we've got plenty of outdoor activities. If you like the arts, we have a world-class symphony. We have art galleries. I think there's so much that's here. But again, like you said, there's that vocal minority that always seems to want to bash it. And it's great that we have an advocate out there that's helping to promote and giving us, even as business owners, a vehicle to be able to promote the area to people from the outside.
Yeah, I think it's so important. One of the things I started when I came on board was a little video blog called Good News Friday. So every Friday, it's so fun. But every Friday, we just kind of do a wrap up of like 5 to 10 things that have either happened that week or are happening over the weekend, and just try to give a shout out to our businesses and local government, local activities, nonprofits. And I tell you what, there's never a shortage of stories. The only time, in 2 years, we've been doing it every Friday, which in hindsight, why we picked Friday kind of makes for like, oh crap, you can't take Friday off because you have to do Good News Friday. But it's never a shortage. We stopped for COVID for about a month, and I said, you know what, there's still good news happening. We got to bring this back, and it's been very well received.
Well, you're exactly right. And I was never that involved until I started seeing those Good News Fridays. And it's pretty amazing, some of the stories I was not even aware of. So I'm really glad that you're doing that. And again, helping to get that message out to even outside of the community, because you're putting it onto social media. Hopefully that's kind of, moving out the other, to other parts of the state and, maybe even, this region of the country, that people can see the good points in Johnstown.
I have JB's, my husband's uncle, lives in Rhode Island, Uncle Jimmy. He tunes in for Good News Friday every Friday. So it's more than just the region. There's Uncle Jimmy in Rhode Island. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So during this whole COVID pandemic, does the role of the chamber, did it change a little bit with everything that was happening?
It did. And I'm really proud of our staff because, it was just uncharted territory. And one of the things we decided early on was to start, instead of doing a weekly email, we started doing a daily email, and it is jam-packed. And it was such a great tool for our businesses to talk about how things have changed, how they're pivoting and making things work, what maybe their new hours are or their new ways of doing things. It was also an opportunity to share, again, just good news, things that were happening around the region, opportunities for people to get help if they needed it. And so that was one of the things that we started early on, and I think at this point we've done probably 70 of them. So I think that was a good addition. We also had to start looking at doing things virtually, like, a lot of different organizations. Just because we weren't allowed to meet in person, we didn't want to just give up and say, well, we'll see you 3 months from now at the end of this. We wanted to keep in touch. So we started bi-weekly, opportunities for people to get together by Zoom. We held some events by Zoom. So just look for those opportunities to try to keep people connected and allow our businesses to talk about the ways that they were maneuvering through COVID and still being successful.
Yeah, I've been working virtually for 6.5 years, so the pandemic didn't really change how I was conducting business, but I was amazed how many businesses struggled to kind of get started with it. I mean, now it seems like a lot of them have embraced it, but I guess you take it for granted when you've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, you were uniquely poised to do well with this, but a lot of businesses had never thought about how to do things virtually, how to keep communicating. In our restaurants, they're used to people coming in and sitting down and having dinner. The ones that really embraced the takeout and kind of changing the way they did things did very, very well. In fact, a lot of them are, keeping what they've learned and making that now part of the day-to-day, even now that they're allowed to open to customers coming in, just as an example. Right. So I agree there was a mix. There were some people that said, okay, how are we going to change? How are we going to make this happen? And then others that were a little, I think, just kind of freaked out by the whole thing and had to adjust a little bit and get used to some things. So, think about, no one really talked about Zoom 3 months ago or 4 months ago. I mean, some people did, some people used it. Now it's a word that everybody knows, everybody's familiar with it. We've all gotten better at using it. So there's things like that have come out of this for sure.
Exactly. So what I'm really interested in is to hear some of the success stories that you've come across during this COVID. Like, how have some of these businesses adapted? And I know we talked briefly kind of offline about some unique stories that I thought was really interesting, how people took businesses that would normally be kind of in-person businesses and were able to adapt during COVID. So could you relate some of those stories for us?
Yeah, I sure can, because there have been so many, and they're fascinating. I was looking through our email newsletter, the past 70 that we've done, and there's just example after example. It's been really, really cool. I'll start. One that just happened this past week was I'm happy to be part of UPJ. I teach public relations there, University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown. Right. And Pitt, one of the things that they were working on was a virtual job fair for their 2020 graduates. Here's this class that was coming out. Many of them had internships that were taken back. Many of them had job offers that were taken back. And Pitt just did an excellent job, by Zoom, planning it through Zoom with all sorts of people from all of the campuses, of saying, let's do this virtual job fair. Let's invite companies to interview our candidates. They can kind of go around and talk virtually with different organizations and companies, and let's, try to help them get back into a successful job market. So, that's an example. Another example I love, Dale Oxygen, one of our chamber members, they took this opportunity because knowing that classrooms were closed and they always have the need for welders, they took this opportunity to push out information, videos on what it's like to be a welder, how you can become a welder. Kids were home, had the opportunity, if kids and parents, to say, okay, well, I wonder what this would entail. And so I thought that was neat. That was a neat way that they used that. We had some great examples in retail. Retailers, I think of Striking Boutique, which is owned by Lacey Ott, who's a Bishop McCourt High School graduate. Lacey, like all retailers, you had to shut your doors. Lacey has a really fun store and like a young clientele. So she started doing virtual fashion shows, lots of curbside pickups. So people would be able to watch these fashion shows, see items that they liked, and then purchase them and then pick them up curbside. And she's done very, very well. Gold Rush Boutique is another boutique in Ebensburg. Same thing. They started really pushing things out on social media, daily emails, specials, lots of opportunity for people to see their merchandise and then, purchase it online and then pick it up curbside. Some of our restaurants just knocked it out of the park. There were some, I think, that were busier during COVID than, during the regular routine. And those were the ones that were able, again, to pivot to, beef up their takeout menus, work out a process that was safe for customers and safe for their staff, and really just promote the heck out of things. I mean, I have like just a list in front of me. The library, is offering curbside pickup for people who aren't comfortable coming in. You can go online, check out your book, and you can pick it up on the curb. The Altoona Curve has been doing a lot of fun things, since people aren't coming to the stadium, but they were able to drive through the parking lot and do different Altoona Curve kind of activities to keep people thinking about the curve. So when that, baseball is allowed to open back up, they haven't lost touch with their fans.
Right.
I think about our church, Matt. I mean, think about how churches have had to adapt. I got to go to church for the first time this Sunday, but who would have thought after all these years that we would be watching Mass? I'll never forget watching Easter Mass with my whole family in the living room. And then, it got to the point where you could have communion outside. And so it's been fascinating. Like, I don't want to say fun, because I think this whole thing has been tragic. Obviously, there's lives lost and lots of people, are just impacted by this so much. But I think we've all learned, and I think we're all a little better for it.
You're exactly right. And I find it interesting as we start to come out of this, there seems to be a certain faction of people that just want to completely go back to the old normal. And one thing I've been talking about a lot, not only in on the podcast, on social media, and to my clients, is this idea of there will be a new normal. And how can we incorporate the lessons that we've learned here through the pandemic into our everyday lives? So, for example, you were talking about the church. Well, we have small groups. We were forced with the pandemic to start meeting virtually through Zoom. And I know my group loved the convenience of Zoom. We didn't have to get up, go somewhere. We could just sit in the convenience of our house. We didn't have to worry about travel. I mean, there was just so many benefits to it that they've chosen. We do a hybrid meeting now. So sometimes people want to get together. So a couple people will come over to my house. We'll sit outside with social distancing, and we'll just have a big screen, and I Zoom them in. And I have to thank Eric for the idea. So he was the one that gave me that.
Good job, Eric.
There's others that are doing it fully. We've actually talked about, and not just to focus on church, but I think it was a good example where how we can start utilizing the technology, like broadcasting our masses via Facebook Live, to reach kind of people on the fringes. And I think even from a business standpoint, we can start utilizing technology to touch those people that are kind of in the fringes, that may not be able to or want to come to a retail store, but be able to get our message out to them and to draw them into our businesses. Do you see that happening within some of the business community here within Johnstown?
I definitely do. And I think, one of the things you talked about just raises for me the issue that everyone's going to come at this differently. It's not like we're open and COVID's gone away. So people, and that's one of the things I've been talking to business owners about, we have to be patient and realize that people are all going to have different comfort levels, and some are going to want to rush back in and have things kind of go back to normal. Others are going to hang back and, want to do things a little bit differently. I would hope and I would encourage our business members to use what they've learned from this and keep it, if not keep it as part of their day-to-day, certainly keep up with it and keep it in your back pocket, because we just never know when, I hope that we never get to another point where we're shut down like we were. But right. I think to just be cognizant of the fact that it happened once and that we've had to learn these tools and learn new ways of doing things. And let's face it, we're creatures of habit, and it wasn't easy for a lot of us. I think about myself again with teaching. I never wanted to teach a virtual class. I like seeing my students in front of me. I like seeing their expressions. I like having that conversation. I fought doing virtual teaching like tooth and nail. And I was forced at both UPJ, and I also teach for St. Francis at Bishop McCord. I teach a business class. I was forced to take both of those online. My first week or so, my Zooms were horrible. Like I had glitches, I had, where they couldn't hear me or whatever. But by the end, it felt pretty good. And I got back to where I felt like we were really engaging, even though it was on Zoom. So old dog, new tricks. I learned them. Right. When I go back to school in the fall, that's going to be part of how I teach now because I had to learn it that way. So I hope the business community, and I think from what I'm hearing from a lot of them, they are going to take what they've learned, maybe keep some of it, maybe, go back to what was our old normal as much as they can, but knowing they have some new tools and new ways of doing things should they need to.
Yeah. And it's interesting, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about Bishop McCord and how Bishop McCord High School, which is the high school that my kids and Amy's kids have gone to, and how they had already basically had a virtual classroom in place. And when COVID hit, they were immediately able to pivot to the virtual classroom. And I know in this coming year, because my youngest son will be a junior. Wow. Can't believe that.
That's crazy.
I know, isn't it? Well, you just graduated your youngest. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But they're going to look at doing kind of a hybrid sort of, in-person virtual system. And a lot of the public schools haven't been able to adapt to that. And I think that can really kind of transform how even education is done. That and we can possibly broaden the reach, especially to speak specifically to Bishop McCord, how they can broaden their reach because of the virtual aspects that they have and maybe reach people that normally maybe couldn't afford to send their kids to that type of school, may now be able to have access to it through a virtual option.
Well, think about the application there just for snow days. Our kids growing up, our older kids, when you had a snow day, it's like, oh, sorry, you're just going to sit home and now you're going to have to make that day up. Now with this virtual system in place, teachers can still teach and students can still learn even if it's a blizzard outside. So that's going to change the way schools operate. But I agree. I think Bishop McCourt was, up and running and that really benefited those students. They didn't have to kind of build up to that. It kind of immediately went to that online teaching and it worked well. But it has applications for even if, we get a cure for COVID or at least a vaccine and it isn't such a big deal anymore. It still has applications for, bad weather or just, other things that might happen. Maybe your student isn't feeling well, but is well enough to at least kind of sit through a virtual class and doesn't have to miss that day. So I agree.
Yeah, and it's interesting how situations like the pandemic forces us a lot of times to get outside our comfort zone. And when things are just going normal, it's so easy just to sit back and just do business as usual. But when we're forced out, it now, I think, opens our eyes. It changes our paradigm, and we can realize that, boy, there's a lot different and better ways that we can do things. And that's what I'm hoping. And that's the one thing I want to ask you about some of your thoughts on what you think businesses may need to do to adapt to this new normal that we'll be facing.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is just comfort with use of social media. I think, sometimes those of us who are a little older say, oh, I'm never going to be good at this. Now, I teach it, so I'm forced myself every year to get up to date on the newer things.
Right.
But businesses are starting to do a much better job of communicating with their customers, showcasing, themselves and their business. And I think that's something that they're going to have to continue to embrace. I think being creative in how, I think of an example I just saw today, the corner coffee shop up in Richland. They're going to have a corner coffee cruise. So they're going to have a 50s themed and invite people with like the classic cars to come in and, get their food and then come out and sit in their cars and then kind of, safely, socially distance themselves from others, but get to enjoy the cars and the company of others. So I think creativity, comfort with different ways of communicating, and I think just that willingness to be innovative and to be patient and to look for, different ways of doing things without just becoming, despondent or giving up. I think, I think that's part of what people are going to have to take out of what we've learned and keep using as they move forward.
I completely agree with you there. So it's, again, social media, you mentioned that. I still haven't figured out Snapchat for the life of me, but
I don't think we're allowed to.
Exactly. Well, we took over Facebook and now we're taking over Instagram, so maybe we can overrun Snapchat.
They'll come up with something new to keep
TikTok,
us away.
Right?
Right.
Exactly.
Well, it's funny. Think of TikTok though. That's another kind of like Zoom. We weren't really all talking about it. That got lots of people through COVID and right. That's another example. It's a great new tool that people are like, what the heck is this? But now you see individuals and organizations using it and getting in front of a whole new audience. It's exciting.
It really is. It really is. So I think, it's we can't get stuck on our ways, but social media, for as you mentioned, I think is a great way to be able to start getting our message out to even a broader marketplace. And I think, from the Johnstown standpoint, as you and I well know, sometimes we kind of get stuck in our little bubble. I'm really glad you came on the program here today, Amy. Wanted to see, just let the audience know, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you and the chamber?
The best way, you either call us or you can send me an email. My email is amy@crchamber.com. And then the phone number is 814-536-5107. It's kind of funny. Right now, we're still working virtually. I am in the office. My staff has different comfort levels with coming back to the office right away. And so we're kind of, they're doing super work from home. So I'm comfortable with that right now. But I forget that my the office number rings directly to my cell phone. It was kind of funny because the other day it was on the news about our Green Ribbon campaign, which is this fun campaign where we have green ribbons and posters to kind of highlight that our businesses are reopened. And it ran on the 6 a.m. news. And so somebody called and it went right through to my cell phone. They wanted a green ribbon. So I got this call at 6:15 like, hey, can I get a green ribbon? And I said, it's 6:15 in the morning. I forgot that they were probably just thinking they could leave a message at the chamber. So please know that if you call, it'll go right through, and I'm happy to talk to you even at 6:15 in the morning. 9's better, but I'll talk to you at 6:15. I appreciate the enthusiasm. So.
That's exactly right. Well, that's what we want to see too. So, and I know you and I could probably go on forever. Thank God, Eric sent me a little message here. So, Amy, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's, you're a superstar, and I'm so glad to have you come on and help to promote, business in the Johnstown, Cambria County area.
Yeah, well, I'm crazy about our businesses, and I'm super proud of how they've adjusted. And so thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about that.
Not a problem. So I'm sure we'll see each other real soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Eric.
Matt and Amy, this has been fantastic. Amy, thank you so much for coming on. And Matt, of course, thank you for inviting her. It wouldn't have happened without you connecting us with Amy and learning a lot about what she has done in the past and what she's doing currently. Amy, I do have a couple questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. As a small business owner myself, I've always thought of the Chamber of Commerce as a wonderful resource for me as a small business owner. I don't think the general public uses the Chamber of Commerce as much as they could to learn more about small business. Do you have some resources that I, as a consumer, can tap into to know what small businesses are doing in my community?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. When I first started, a lot of people don't really know what a chamber is or how it might help them, other than, they know you can get a directory with listings of all the businesses. I would encourage people to follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And then the other thing is you don't have to be a chamber member to sign up for our daily emails. So that's a great place to get information. Like I said, I think we've done 75 or something like that. And those are just packed full of information about our businesses, what's open, what some of the changes are, discounts, sales, fun things that are going on. That's also a place where we put community events. So we're a good resource for the public as far as business activity, but also what's happening in the region, what's going on. And that Good News Friday kind of wraps that up on Fridays too. So that would be something that people could get through their social media.
Awesome. Okay, what we'll do is we'll make sure that we put some links in the show notes. For anybody listening, in the show notes, you can go check out the show notes, whether you're on your phone or the computer, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Go to the show notes and you'll see some links, clickable links that you can click and go right to those resources, whether it's Facebook or whatever Amy decides to include in those show notes. So please go check that out. And I don't want to overstep my bounds here, Amy, but Matt said it best. You guys could go on for quite a bit longer. I know that you have way more stories. And I think the audience would really be interested in an update from you in 3 to 6 months. Would you be willing to come back on the show?
Oh my gosh, yeah, because I'm sure things are going to continue to change, evolve, and I'm sure we'll have lots of great success stories in 3 months, lots more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. Brother, thank you so much for bringing her on. This was fantastic. I loved it, and I'm sure your audience appreciates the great information.
Well, I knew Amy would knock it out of the park, so
Absolutely.
I had full confidence in her.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. And the last thank you, of course, goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to Your Business, Your Life with Matt DiFrancesco. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Matt comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Your Business, Your Life podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment, legal, or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or another qualified professional with any questions you may have regarding your business or personal planning. DiFrancesco Financial Concierge, LLC, doing business as DiFrancesco Virtual Family Office, is a registered investment advisor. Registration with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission or any state securities authority does not imply a certain level of skill or training.